Gardening is one of those topics that sounds simple on the surface, but the more you think about it, the more it reveals something deeper about a culture, about how people relate to the land, to the seasons, and to the idea of growing your own food. I have had conversations with students from Japan and South Korea about their gardens, and honestly, it made me look at my own country differently. So today I want to share what I have learned, what I have observed, and a little bit of my own story too, because this topic is actually personal for me. Let me start with the Philippines, since that is where I am from and where I live right now. If you grew up in the Philippine countryside, you already know what a typical Filipino garden looks like. It is not something people plan too carefully or design with a specific aesthetic in mind. It is practical, colorful, and a little bit wild. The flowers you will almost always find are bougainvillea, which are those bright, papery flowers that climb walls and fences, roses, sampaguita, which is our national flower and smells absolutely wonderful, gumamila or hibiscus, and daisies. These are everywhere. They are easy to grow, they survive our tropical climate without much effort, and most people plant them simply because they are pretty or because a neighbor gave them a cutting. When it comes to vegetables, Filipino home gardens are also very practical. The most common ones you will find growing in backyards or along fences are sweet potato, string beans, cassava, taro or what we call gabi, ampalaya which is bitter gourd, squash, red chili peppers, and papaya. These are staple ingredients in Filipino cooking, so it makes sense that people grow them at home when they can. Oregano is also very common, mostly used as a home remedy rather than a cooking herb. And when it comes to trees, mango is probably the most iconic. Almost every Filipino family with a yard has at least one mango tree. Malunggay, which is also called morina and is known internationally as a superfood, is another one you see constantly. Santal, calamansi, which we use the way other cultures use lemon or lime, and other fruit trees are also common. So that is the Filipino side. Practical, tropical, and deeply connected to what the family eats. Now let me tell you about what I have learned from my conversations with Japanese students, because it is genuinely fascinating and so different from what I grew up with. The biggest difference I noticed immediately is the relationship with seasons. Japan has 4 very distinct seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and that completely shapes how Japanese people approach gardening. They plan according to what the season allows. They get excited about it in a way that honestly surprised me at first. I had a student from Niigata Prefecture, which is a region in Japan famous for having very heavy snowfall, sometimes for months at a time, and this student would talk about gardening with so much enthusiasm. When spring arrived and the snow started melting, the excitement about getting back into the soil was real and visible. You could hear it in how they talked about it. What struck me about Niigata specifically is that the soil there is considered some of the best in Japan for growing rice. And there is a theory, not scientifically proven as far as I know but widely believed, that the long months of snow actually allow the soil to rest and recover, which makes it richer and more productive when the growing season finally begins. Whether or not that is exactly true, the rice from Niigata is genuinely considered premium quality, so something is working. In Japan, gardening is not always about survival or necessity the way it sometimes is in the Philippines. For many Japanese people, especially those living in cities, gardening is a hobby. It is a form of relaxation, a way to connect with nature, and a source of personal satisfaction. I have had students who collect indoor plants not because they are useful but because they find them beautiful or calming. During the years when much of the world was stuck at home during the pandemic, plant collecting and indoor gardening became enormously popular in Japan. Some students told me they had whole corners of their apartments dedicated to specific types of leafy plants. Not flowers necessarily, just green, living things that made their space feel more alive. One thing I found particularly interesting is the concept of renting a plot of land to garden. I had students who lived in Tokyo, which is one of the most densely populated cities in the world, and they would travel to a neighboring area, like Kanagawa, just to tend a small vegetable plot on the weekends. There are programs, some supported by local governments, that allow city residents to rent small sections of farmland to use as personal gardens. They are not doing it because they have to. They are doing it because they want to. They want the experience of growing something with their own hands, of being in the soil, of watching a seed become food. That is a mindset that I find genuinely beautiful. I also had a student from South Korea who did something very similar, renting land outside the city to grow vegetables on weekends. So this practice seems to be common across East Asia, at least in countries where urban living is the norm and people feel disconnected from nature and from growing things. Now here is where I want to be honest, because this is what this channel is about. In the Philippines, especially in the countryside, the attitude toward gardening and land use is often very different. And I say this not to criticize, but because I think it is worth talking about. We have land. A lot of it, especially in rural areas. Families often have unused portions of their property, or relatives who own plots that sit empty for years. And yet, many people do not use that land to grow food. Some of it is cultural. Some of it is practical because farming is hard work and not everyone has the time or the energy after already working one or more jobs. And some of it honestly is just habit. If you grew up watching adults around you not prioritize gardening, you probably did not prioritize it either. I live in an area right now where the land around me is not mine, but the people who own it have said they plan to grow vegetables on their property. And that small thing gave me a kind of hope because land that grows food is land that is working for the people around it. I want to be honest with you here and share something personal. I am not in a stable living situation right now. I am someone who has been through a lot, and I find comfort in the idea of having my own small piece of land someday. My grandmother had a property in the mountains where she grew vegetables, raised animals, and lived a largely self-sufficient life, well into her early 70s. That image stays with me. That is my version of a dream retirement. Not a big house, not a luxurious lifestyle, just land, plants, animals, clean air, and peace. I do not know yet if I will get there, but the goal keeps me going. One more thing I want to touch on is the cultural difference in how nature and green spaces are valued between Japan and the Philippines. Japan has famous gardens that are considered national treasures and tourist destinations. The Japanese approach to nature, especially in traditional garden design, is about harmony, balance, and intentionality. Every plant, every stone, every path has a purpose. Gardens in Japan reflect a deep respect for the natural world and a long tradition of considering beauty in nature as something worth protecting and investing in. In the Philippines, nature is everywhere. We have mountains, rice terraces, beaches, forests, and incredible biodiversity. But because we live surrounded by it, we sometimes take it for granted. Formal gardens and parks are not as central to our culture as they are in Japan. When you live somewhere that feels like spring all year round, where things grow without much effort, the act of intentionally cultivating a garden feels less urgent. There is something both beautiful and a little sad about that because the abundance around us sometimes makes us less careful about protecting and nurturing it. The pandemic changed something for many Filipinos too. More people started growing vegetables at home during the lockdowns, partly out of necessity when supply chains were disrupted, and partly because being stuck at home made people want something alive and growing to take care of. Some of that interest stayed even after restrictions lifted, and I think that is a good thing. Gardening, whether you are in a cramped Tokyo apartment renting a plot on weekends, or in a Philippine province with a backyard full of papaya and sweet potato, is fundamentally about the same thing. It is about patience, about nurturing something outside yourself, about the quiet satisfaction of watching something grow because you gave it attention. That is something every culture understands, even if the expression looks completely different. If I ever get my small piece of land, I already know what I am planting first. Sweet potato leaves, because they grow fast, they are nutritious, they feed both people and animals, and they ask almost nothing from you in return. That feels right to me. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, subscribe to help me hit my 2,000 video goal. This is my unfiltered diary of solo living in the Philippines, from the tough days in the ESL classroom to my journey learning Japanese and Korean. Yes, I am still a beginner. If you would like to support my work and my retirement fund, check out the Buy a Treat for My Pets link in the description. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next update. Thanks for being part of the journey.
See you then.